There existed a particular brutality in being relegated to expendable necessity rather than valued contributor within systems designed for survival, systematic reduction of individual worth to functional utility that operated beyond simple wartime triage to encompass deliberate classification of certain lives as acceptable losses when strategic objectives required sacrifice disguised as practica. Resource allocation during crisis management that prioritized hierarchy over humanity. For Lyra Hale, expendability had been cultivated through circumstances that honored desperate need over personal safety, while serving military necessity that demanded improvised medical support despite complete absence of formal training, qualification, or protective equipment that might preserve individual welfare, while maintaining operational effectiveness during territorial conflicts that exceeded normal capacity for strategic response. 25 years old, and carrying presence that commanded dismissal rather than recognition, she had been pressed into service within military operations that required medical assistance from any available personnel, regardless of capability or survival probability, assignment that reflected systematic utilization of Omega population as disposable resource, rather than acknowledged contributor to community welfare. The Northern Campaign possessed characteristics that transcended normal territorial dispute to encompass existential threat to kingdom survival through coordinated assault that challenged fundamental assumptions about military preparedness and appropriate strategic response to invasion forces, whose capability exceeded conventional assessment of threat potential and territorial defense requirement. Enemy forces represented convergence of multiple pack alliances, whose coordination suggested systematic planning that honored strategic thinking over simple territorial acquisition, comprehensive assault that challenged established military doctrine through demonstration of capability that exceeded normal assessment of appropriate threat response and defensive preparation requirements. Her position within field medical operations reflected desperate necessity rather than strategic planning, circumstances that had eliminated conventional support structures while requiring improvised treatment methods that honored immediate survival over proper medical protocol, assignment that demonstrated systematic utilization of available personnel regardless of qualification or survival probability. The makeshift medical station operated according to principles that prioritized rapid treatment over comprehensive care, while serving recognition that battlefield conditions eliminated luxury of proper facilities, in favor of immediate intervention that might preserve lives during crisis that exceeded normal capacity for organized medical response through established infrastructure. Ancient bloodlines that traced connection to healing traditions possessed significance that transcended normal assessment, while serving recognition that certain families had contributed to community welfare through medical knowledge that operated beyond conventional training to encompass hereditary understanding of treatment methods that honored traditional wisdom alongside practical necessity. Her family heritage included connection to healing arts that had been systematically undervalued during peacetime prosperity, while serving recognition that Omega designation had eliminated acknowledgement of capability that might prove essential during crisis situations, requiring comprehensive utilization of available resources regardless of traditional hierarchy or conventional assessment. The Hale lineage possessed knowledge that had been preserved through generations of practical application, despite systematic dismissal by authorities whose understanding of medical capability operated according to formal training, rather than hereditary wisdom that honored traditional methods alongside contemporary necessity for comprehensive treatment that served community welfare during challenging circumstances. Tonight would witness convergence of desperation and opportunity that tested whether hereditary knowledge could provide foundation for intervention that exceeded normal expectation for improvised medical care, while battlefield conditions would create circumstances requiring comprehensive utilization of available capability, regardless of traditional limitation or conventional assessment of appropriate. Create qualification. The two figures who would encounter her intervention represented strategic significance that extended far beyond simple military casualties to encompass fundamental questions about territorial succession and appropriate preparation for leadership responsibility that honored capability alongside inherited authority, recognition that certain individuals possessed importance that transcended normal. Battlefield assessment. Prince Aldrich Shadowmane embodied traditional approach to royal authority through systematic cultivation of military capability, alongside strategic thinking that honored conventional hierarchy, while serving territorial protection through established methods that had proven effective for maintaining kingdom security against challenges that operated according to normal parameters for territorial dispute. Prince Dorian Shadowmane represented alternative approach to leadership that balanced strategic necessity with comprehensive assessment of community welfare, while serving territorial protection through innovative methods that honored adaptation alongside tradition. Recognition that effective governance required flexibility that transcended rigid adherence to established protocol. Their rivalry possessed characteristics that extended beyond simple sibling competition to encompass fundamental disagreement about appropriate leadership philosophy and strategic direction for kingdom development, conflict that honored different approaches to territorial management while serving recognition that succession would determine future course for community welfare and security arrangement. Hence, the battlefield encounter that would bring desperate Omega into contact with royal significance represented convergence of circumstances that challenged comfortable assumptions about value distribution and appropriate recognition of capability that operated beyond conventional hierarchy to encompass hereditary knowledge that might prove essential for preservation of strategic assets. In recognition that single moment of intervention might determine whether territorial succession proceeded according to planned parameters or required fundamental reassessment of appropriate leadership preparation, forces would converge that would test whether systematic dismissal of Omega capability had eliminated resources that could prove essential for kingdom survival through crisis management. Ancient wisdom that operated through hereditary knowledge was about to encounter strategic necessity that demanded comprehensive utilization of available resources, while battlefield conditions would provide catalyst for recognition that challenged comfortable assumptions about appropriate value distribution and legitimate acknowledgement of capability that transcended conventional limitation through practical demonstration of essential contribution. The Omega, who had been systematically dismissed as expendable resource, was about to discover whether hereditary knowledge provided foundation for intervention that exceeded normal expectation, while the kingdom whose survival depended on preservation of strategic leadership would encounter challenge to conventional assessment through individual whose capability commanded recognition rather than actual dismissal through systematic undervaluation. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day, a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The northern battlefield possessed atmosphere that transcended normal territorial conflict to encompass systematic devastation that honored strategic destruction over conventional military engagement, landscape where ancient forests had been transformed into charnel ground that testified to coordinated assault designed to eliminate resistance through comprehensive application of overwhelming force that exceeded normal parameters for territorial dispute. Smoke from burning settlements created haze that obscured tactical assessment while serving enemy strategy that honored confusion over clear engagement, environmental condition that challenged conventional military response through systematic elimination of visibility that might provide foundation for organized resistance against invasion forces whose capability exceeded initial threat assessment. Lyra moved through improvised medical station that operated according to desperation rather than established protocol, makeshift facility where wounded warriors received treatment that honored immediate survival over proper medical procedure, while serving recognition that battlefield conditions eliminated luxury of comprehensive care in favor of rapid intervention that might preserve lives during crisis. Around her, casualties reflected scope of engagement that transcended normal territorial skirmish to encompass existential threat to kingdom survival, wounded whose injuries testified to enemy capability that had exceeded strategic assessment while serving demonstration that invasion represented coordinated effort designed to eliminate resistance through systematic application of superior force and tactical coordination. Pressure bandage, she requested from supply assistant, whose presence reflected desperate utilization of available personnel rather than qualified medical support. Systematic assignment that honored immediate necessity over appropriate training, while serving recognition that crisis conditions required improvised response that utilized whatever resources remained available for treatment operation. The systematic treatment of catastrophic injuries required knowledge that transcended formal training to encompass hereditary understanding of healing methods that had been preserved through generations of practical application, traditional wisdom that honored comprehensive assessment of injury patterns alongside immediate intervention requirements that challenged conventional medical limitation. Her movements demonstrated competence that exceeded normal expectation for improvised medical assignment, while serving recognition that Omega designation had failed to account for capability that operated beyond conventional assessment through hereditary knowledge that honored traditional healing methods, alongside strategic necessity for preserving lives during battlefield conditions. "Critical casualties approaching from northern perimeter," announced Field Coordinator, whose voice carried professional authority despite obvious exhaustion that reflected operational tempo, exceeding normal capacity for sustained medical response, systematic pressure that demanded continued operation, despite inadequate resources and overwhelming patient volume that challenged established protocol. The incoming wounded represented escalation beyond current capacity for treatment, while serving demonstration that enemy engagement had intensified beyond normal parameters for territorial conflict. Casualty rates that challenged systematic ability to provide adequate care through available resources and improvised treatment methods that honored immediate necessity over comprehensive medical prodi. Okol. Through smoke that obscured tactical visibility, while serving enemy strategy designed to eliminate coordinated resistance, Lyra observed approaching figures whose condition suggested catastrophic injury, requiring immediate intervention that transcended normal capability for field treatment. Casualties whose survival would depend on comprehensive utilization of available knowledge, regardless of conventional limitation or established hierarchy. Two warriors supported each other through mutual assistance that demonstrated tactical cooperation, despite obvious severity of injuries that challenged individual mobility, approach that honored strategic partnership while serving recognition that survival required collaborative effort that transcended normal military protocol during crisis conditions that eliminated conventional support structure. Their condition revealed evidence of engagement with enemy forces, whose capability had exceeded strategic assessment, while serving demonstration that invasion represented systematic threat to kingdom survival, rather than simple territorial acquisition, injuries that testified to coordination and tactical superiority that challenged comfortable assumptions about defensive preparedness and appropriate. 8. Military response. Alpha designations. Observed Field Coordinator with professional assessment that honored systematic evaluation of incoming casualties, despite obvious priority for immediate treatment, recognition that certain wounded possessed strategic significance that transcended normal battlefield assessment through inherited authority that demanded acknowledgement regardless of current circumstances or operational limitations. The systematic identification carried implications that extended beyond simple medical triage, to encompass political significance regarding territorial leadership and appropriate strategic response to crisis that threatened kingdom survival through elimination of succession planning, and established authority structures that maintained governmental stability during challenging circumstances. Lyra approached wounded figures with competence that honored hereditary knowledge over conventional limitation, while serving recognition that critical injuries required comprehensive intervention, regardless of traditional hierarchy, or established protocol that might restrict treatment based on social status rather than medical necessity and immediate survival requirements. Up close, their condition revealed complexity that transcended normal battlefield casualties to encompass systematic damage that challenged conventional treatment methods, while requiring innovative application of healing knowledge that operated beyond established medical protocol through traditional wisdom that honored comprehensive assessment of injury patterns alongside strategic intervention. Coordinated assault patterns, she observed with professional assessment that honored systematic evaluation of wound characteristics, while serving recognition that enemy engagement had utilized tactical methods designed to eliminate resistance through specific targeting of leadership elements and strategic assets that maintained kingdom authority during crisis management operations. The systematic analysis revealed evidence of strategic thinking that transcended random violence to encompass coordinated effort designed to eliminate specific targets rather than simple territorial acquisition, tactical approach that honored comprehensive planning over conventional military engagement, while serving strategic objectives that challenged fundamental assumptions about invasion purpose. First casualty demonstrated injuries that suggested targeted assault, designed to eliminate strategic capability rather than simple battlefield engagement, wound patterns that honored systematic approach to leadership elimination, while serving enemy objectives that transcended territorial acquisition, to encompass governmental disruption through elimination of succession planning and established AO authority structures. Poisoned weapons, she noted with growing recognition of treatment complexity that exceeded normal medical challenge, while requiring intervention methods that operated beyond conventional healing through traditional knowledge that honored comprehensive understanding of toxin neutralization alongside immediate stabilization of life-threatening injuries that challenge survival probability. The systematic identification of enhanced weapon systems revealed enemy capability that exceeded initial threat assessment, while serving demonstration that invasion represented comprehensive assault on kingdom survival, rather than simple territorial dispute, tactical superiority that challenged comfortable assumptions about defensive preparedness and appropriate strategic response to coordinated attack. Second casualty exhibited similar characteristics that confirmed pattern of targeted elimination rather than random battlefield engagement, evidence that enemy forces possessed intelligence about strategic significance of specific individuals while serving tactical objectives that honored systematic disruption of governmental stability through elimination of succession planning and territorial leadership. Both require immediate intervention, she announced with professional assessment that honored medical necessity over administrative convenience, while serving recognition that survival probability depended on comprehensive treatment that transcended normal field capability through innovative application of available resources and hereditary knowledge that operated beyond conventional limitation. The systematic evaluation revealed complexity that challenged normal treatment protocol, while requiring intervention that honored traditional healing methods alongside immediate stabilization, comprehensive approach that utilized hereditary knowledge preserved through generations of practical application, despite systematic dismissal by authorities whose assessment operated according to formal training rather than traditional wisdom. Around makeshift medical station, where crisis had eliminated conventional protocol in favor of desperate improvisation, other casualties awaited treatment that honored immediate survival over comprehensive care, while serving recognition that battlefield conditions required systematic utilization of available capability regardless of traditional hierarchy or established assessment of appropriate qualification. But these two wounded represented significance that transcended normal battlefield casualties through characteristics that suggested strategic importance beyond simple military personnel, individuals whose survival might affect fundamental questions about territorial succession and appropriate strategic response to crisis that threatened kingdom authority through systematic elimination of government mental stability. In growing recognition that hereditary knowledge might provide foundation for intervention that exceeded normal expectation for improvised medical care, treatment would commence that honored traditional wisdom alongside immediate necessity while serving strategic objectives that transcended individual survival to encompass broader implications for kingdom welfare and territorial security. The Omega, whose capability had been systematically dismissed, was about to discover whether traditional healing methods could preserve lives that possessed strategic significance beyond normal battlefield assessment, while the kingdom whose survival depended on preservation of leadership would encounter demonstration that authentic capability operated beyond conventional hierarchy through hereditary knowledge that commanded recognition rather than systematic dismissal. The intervention that commenced through desperate necessity possessed characteristics that transcended normal battlefield medicine to encompass comprehensive application of hereditary knowledge that had been preserved through generations of traditional healing practice, systematic utilization of wisdom that operated beyond formal training to encompass intuitive understanding of treatment methods that honored ancient techniques alongside immediate survival requirements. Lyra began assessment that honored systematic evaluation of injury patterns while serving recognition that coordinated assault had created complexity exceeding normal battlefield casualties. Wounds that demonstrated enemy capability designed to eliminate specific targets through tactical methods that challenged conventional medical response and established treatment protocols. The first casualty exhibited evidence of systematic poisoning that operated beyond simple weapon enhancement to encompass strategic elimination designed to ensure death despite medical intervention. Toxin characteristics that challenged normal neutralization methods while requiring innovative application of traditional knowledge that honored comprehensive understanding of botanical medicine alongside immediate stabilization requirements. Nightshade derivative, she identified with professional assessment, that revealed hereditary knowledge exceeding formal medical training, while serving recognition that enemy forces possessed sophisticated understanding of chemical warfare that transcended normal territorial conflict, to encompass systematic elimination of strategic assets through enhanced weapon systems designed for specific tactical objectives. The systematic analysis demonstrated capability that operated beyond conventional Omega assessment through inherited understanding of toxin identification and neutralization methods that had been preserved within family traditions, despite systematic dismissal by authorities whose evaluation honored formal qualification over practical knowledge that might prove essential during crisis situations. Her treatment approach utilized combination of traditional herbal remedies alongside innovative application of available resources, methodology that honored ancestral wisdom while serving immediate necessity for comprehensive intervention that transcended normal field capability through systematic utilization of hereditary knowledge that operated according to different parameters than established. Medical protocol, counter-agent preparation, she announced with competence that challenged comfortable assumptions about Omega capability, while serving demonstration that authentic medical knowledge operated beyond formal certification through practical understanding that honored traditional healing methods alongside strategic necessity for preserving lives whose significance exceeded normal battlefield assessment. The systematic preparation of neutralizing compounds required understanding that transcended academic training to encompass practical knowledge of botanical interactions preserved through generations of family practice, traditional wisdom that honored comprehensive assessment of healing properties alongside immediate application requirements that challenged conventional medical limitation. Second casualty demonstrated similar poisoning characteristics, combined with trauma injuries, that suggested coordinated assault designed to overwhelm medical capability through systematic complexity that challenged normal treatment methods, wound patterns that honored strategic thinking over random violence while serving enemy objectives that transcended simple territorial acquisition. Complementary toxins, she observed with growing recognition of tactical sophistication, that revealed enemy planning designed to eliminate medical intervention through systematic overload of treatment capability, strategic approach that honored comprehensive disruption over simple battlefield engagement, while serving coordination that exceeded initial threat assessment of invasion forces. The systematic identification of multiple poison types revealed capability that operated beyond normal military engagement to encompass comprehensive assault on kingdom survival through elimination of strategic leadership, tactical superiority that challenged comfortable assumptions about defensive preparedness while serving recognition that invasion represented existential threat rather than territorial dispute. Her response required innovative combination of treatment methods that honored traditional knowledge alongside immediate necessity for comprehensive intervention, approach that utilized hereditary understanding of botanical medicine, while serving strategic objectives that transcended individual survival to encompass broader implications for kingdom welfare and territorial security through preservation of strategic assets. Around makeshift medical station where other wounded awaited treatment according to conventional triage protocols, Lyra's comprehensive intervention demonstrated capability that exceeded normal expectation for improvised battlefield medicine, while serving recognition that hereditary knowledge provided foundation for treatment that operated beyond established limitation through practical application of traditional wisdom. Stabilization protocols, she announced with systematic presentation of treatment requirements that honored medical necessity over administrative convenience, while serving recognition that survival probability depended on comprehensive approach that transcended normal field capability through innovative utilization of available resources and ancestral knowledge preserved, despite systematic dismissal. The treatment process required sustained application of traditional healing methods alongside continuous monitoring of physiological responses to neutralization compounds, comprehensive approach that honored systematic assessment of treatment effectiveness, while serving immediate necessity for intervention that might preserve lives, whose significance transcended normal battlefield evaluation. Throughout night hours when battlefield conditions eliminated conventional support while requiring sustained medical intervention despite inadequate resources and overwhelming patient volume, her efforts demonstrated competence that challenged comfortable assumptions about Omega capability, while serving strategic objectives that transcended individual recognition to encompass kingdom welfare. Toxin elimination proceeding according to projected parameters, she reported, with professional satisfaction that honored systematic evaluation of treatment effectiveness while serving recognition that traditional methods provided foundation for medical intervention that exceeded normal expectation for improvised battlefield care through comprehensive utilization of hereditary knowledge. The systematic monitoring of physiological stabilization revealed evidence that intervention had succeeded beyond normal probability for survival, given severity of coordinated assault designed to eliminate strategic targets through enhanced weapon systems. Treatment success that honored traditional wisdom alongside immediate necessity, while serving demonstration of capability that operated beyond. Conventional assessment. First casualty demonstrated return of consciousness that suggested successful neutralization of systematic poisoning alongside effective treatment of trauma injuries, recovery probability that transcended normal medical expectation, while serving recognition that comprehensive intervention had preserved life whose significance might exceed initial battlefield assessment through strategic importance. Identity verification, he whispered with voice that carried authority despite obvious weakness from sustained injury and systematic poisoning. Recognition that circumstances required acknowledgement of status that transcended normal battlefield casualty assessment, while serving strategic necessity for appropriate identification during crisis, that threatened kingdom authority through coordinated elimination. Prince Aldrich Shadowmane. He identified with systematic presentation of inherited authority, despite current circumstances that challenged normal royal protocol, while serving recognition that battlefield conditions had created situation requiring emergency acknowledgement of succession significance and strategic importance that exceeded normal military casualty evaluation. The revelation carried implications that extended beyond simple medical treatment to encompass fundamental questions about territorial succession and appropriate strategic response to crisis that had threatened kingdom survival through systematic elimination of royal authority, recognition that intervention had preserved strategic asset whose significance transcended normal battlefield assessment. Second casualty followed similar pattern of recovery that demonstrated successful treatment of coordinated assault designed to eliminate strategic targets through enhanced weapon systems. Physiological stabilization that honored traditional healing methods while serving immediate necessity for comprehensive intervention that operated beyond normal field capability through innovative application. Prince Dorian Shadowmane, he announced with voice that mixed gratitude, with growing awareness of circumstances that had brought desperate medical intervention from Omega, whose capability exceeded any assessment based on conventional hierarchy, systematic recognition that survival had been preserved through knowledge that operated beyond formal qualification through hereditary wisdom. The systematic identification of royal authority carried implications that transcended individual gratitude to encompass strategic significance regarding territorial succession and kingdom survival, recognition that intervention had preserved both heirs whose rivalry represented different approaches to leadership philosophy, while serving acknowledgement that medical treatment had affected fundamental questions about governmental stability. Around makeshift medical station where desperate improvisation had preserved lives whose significance exceeded normal battlefield assessment, Dawn approached with recognition that hereditary knowledge had provided foundation for intervention that challenged comfortable assumptions about Omega capability, while serving strategic objectives that transcended individual achievement to encompass kingdom welfare. The revelation that her patients represented royal succession carried implications that would transform desperate medical intervention into strategic significance that extended far beyond simple battlefield treatment. Recognition that traditional wisdom had preserved assets whose survival would affect fundamental questions about territorial authority and appropriate succession planning. In growing awareness that hereditary knowledge had intersected with strategic necessity to create circumstances whose implications exceeded normal medical achievement, transformation would commence that honored capability recognition alongside territorial security, while serving acknowledgement that authentic value operated beyond conventional hierarchy through practical demonstration of essential contribution to kingdom survival. The Omega, whose capability had been systematically dismissed, was about to discover whether medical intervention that had exceeded normal expectation would translate into recognition that challenged comfortable assumptions, while the kingdom whose survival had depended on preservation of strategic leadership would encounter demonstration that authentic capability operated beyond conventional asses. Cement through hereditary knowledge that commanded acknowledgement rather than systematic dismissal. The dawn that revealed truth about preserved lives possessed characteristics that transcended simple medical achievement to encompass strategic transformation, whose implications would challenge fundamental assumptions about kingdom governance and appropriate recognition of capability that operated beyond conventional hierarchy through demonstrated contribution to territorial survival and success. On preservation that exceeded normal battlefield assessment. Royal escort arrived with systematic efficiency that honored protocol despite battlefield conditions, while serving recognition that preservation of strategic assets required immediate evacuation to secure facilities where comprehensive treatment could be provided through established medical infrastructure that operated according to normal parameters for royal healthcare and appropriate protection. Of inherited authority. Lyra found herself summoned alongside recovered casualties, despite expectation that medical intervention would conclude with successful treatment. Systematic inclusion that suggested circumstances had created implications beyond simple battlefield medicine to encompass strategic recognition of capability that had preserved lives whose significance transcended normal assessment of omega contributee. On to community welfare. The journey to Royal Palace operated according to emergency protocols that honored security necessity, while serving acknowledgement that preservation of succession required comprehensive response to crisis that had threatened kingdom survival through coordinated elimination of strategic leadership. Transportation that reflected systematic approach to asset protection during challenging circumstances. Throughout travel that carried implications extending beyond simple medical transport to encompass strategic relocation of individuals whose survival would affect fundamental questions about territorial authority. Awareness developed that intervention had created circumstances requiring acknowledgement that challenged comfortable assumptions about appropriate recognition of capability and legitimacy to contribution to kingdom welfare. Royal chambers prepared for emergency council possessed atmosphere that reflected transformation from normal governance procedures to crisis management that honored strategic necessity over conventional protocol, while serving recognition that circumstances required comprehensive assessment of implications that transcended simple gratitude for medical intervention through systematic evaluation of broader consequences. Alpha King Marcus Shadowmane occupied position at council table that had been arranged for emergency session rather than normal court procedures, his presence commanding attention through combination of royal authority and systematic recognition of crisis that had challenged fundamental assumptions about kingdom security and appropriate preparation for succession continuity during threatening circumstances. The medical intervention, he announced with voice that carried weight of strategic assessment alongside personal acknowledgement of debt that transcended normal gratitude, represents preservation of assets whose significance extends beyond individual survival to encompass fundamental questions about territorial succession and kingdom stability that operate according to principles exceeding norm. Battlefield evaluation. The systematic presentation of circumstances honored political reality, while serving recognition that individual capability had intersected with strategic necessity to create implications that challenged comfortable assumptions about omega contribution to community welfare, acknowledgement that intervention had affected matters of state rather than simple medical emergency. Around council table, where assembled advisors processed revelation with expressions that revealed mixture of amazement and growing awareness that battlefield medicine had preserved succession planning through individual capability that exceeded normal assessment, strategic significance that honored demonstration over inherited assumption about appropriate recognition and legitimate acknowledgement of contribution. Prince Aldrich and Prince Dorian, Alpha King continued with systematic presentation of royal authority that had been preserved through medical intervention. Confirmed that survival probability without immediate treatment would have approached zero according to assessment of systematic poisoning, designed to eliminate succession planning through coordinated assault that exceeded normal territorial threat evaluation. The comprehensive explanation provided context that transcended simple gratitude to encompass strategic understanding of enemy capability that had been designed to eliminate kingdom authority through systematic targeting of royal lineage, tactical approach that honored comprehensive planning over conventional military engagement, while serving objectives that challenged territorial survival. The question, he observed with tone that transformed discussion into strategic calculation, while maintaining royal authority that demanded systematic assessment of implications, concerns appropriate recognition of capability that has preserved kingdom succession through individual intervention that exceeded normal expectation for battlefield medicine and demonstrated knowledge that transcends conventional Omega assessment. The systematic evaluation revealed awareness that individual whose action had preserved strategic assets possessed characteristics that challenged comfortable assumptions about appropriate recognition while serving strategic necessity that honored comprehensive assessment over traditional limitation of capability acknowledgement and legitimate contribution to community welfare. Lyra processed developing situation with understanding that medical intervention had created circumstances extending beyond simple treatment success to encompass political implications, requiring strategic response from royal authority, whose decision would affect her future position within kingdom hierarchy that operated according to established protocols for recognition and reward distribution. Royal decree, Alpha King announced with authority, that transformed strategic calculation into official policy while serving systematic approach to crisis resolution that honored both individual recognition and kingdom necessity, establishes position of royal healer with advisory status that acknowledges capability demonstrated through preservation of succession continuity during territorial CRI. ISIS. The proposal represented transformation from battlefield medical intervention to systematic integration within royal household that honored demonstrated competence while serving strategic objectives that transcended simple reward to encompass comprehensive utilization of capability that had proven essential for kingdom survival through crisis management that exceeded normal parameters. Furthermore, he continued with systematic expansion of recognition that honored strategic thinking alongside individual acknowledgement. Marriage arrangement will formalize bond between preserved succession and individual whose intervention enabled continuation of royal lineage through medical capability that transcended normal battlefield assessment and demonstrated knowledge exceeding convent ional limitation. The declaration carried implications that extended beyond simple reward to encompass political alliance that served kingdom stability, while honoring individual contribution through systematic integration that challenged traditional hierarchy through demonstrated capability rather than inherited status or conventional assessment of appropriate recognition and legitimate acknowledgement of worth. Around council table where assembled advisors processed unprecedented decision with expressions that revealed recognition of transformation from medical emergency to strategic alliance that honored capability over circumstance, while serving kingdom objectives through comprehensive approach to crisis resolution that transcended normal gratitude to encompass systematic policy implementation. Marriage choice. Alpha King specified with authority that acknowledged complexity of circumstances while serving strategic necessity that honored individual autonomy alongside kingdom welfare, will be determined by individual whose intervention preserved succession, acknowledging that capability demonstrated through crisis management commands, recognition of decision-making authority regarding personal future. The systematic presentation of options honored individual agency, while serving recognition that medical intervention had created circumstances requiring acknowledgement that transcended normal reward distribution through demonstration of capability that commanded strategic recognition rather than simple gratitude for emergency assistance during battlefield conditions. Prince Aldrich approached with expression that mixed gratitude with growing awareness of political implications that extended beyond simple acknowledgement of medical debt, systematic recognition that survival had created circumstances requiring strategic response that honored individual capability alongside kingdom necessity through comprehensive assessment of appropriate recognition. The intervention that preserved my life, he stated, with voice that carried royal authority, alongside personal acknowledgement of debt that transcended normal gratitude, demonstrates capability that commands recognition beyond simple reward through systematic integration within kingdom authority that honors demonstrated competence alongside strategic necessity for succession preservation. His proposal represented approach to alliance that honored traditional hierarchy, while serving recognition that circumstances had created implications extending beyond normal political calculation through individual capability that had preserved strategic assets essential for kingdom survival during crisis, that threatened territorial authority and succession continuity. Prince Dorian followed similar pattern of acknowledgement that honored personal debt alongside strategic assessment of circumstances that had created opportunities for alliance formation through demonstrated capability rather than conventional political arrangement. Recognition that medical intervention had established foundation for relationship that transcended normal hierarchy through practical demonstration of essential contribution. The knowledge that enabled survival, he observed with systematic assessment that honored traditional wisdom alongside contemporary necessity, represents capability that serves kingdom welfare through comprehensive approach to crisis management that transcends normal medical limitation, while providing foundation for strategic partnership that honors both individual recognition and territorial security. Their competing proposals reflected different approaches to alliance formation that honored individual capability while serving strategic objectives that transcended simple gratitude through systematic integration of demonstrated competence within kingdom authority, recognition that circumstances had created opportunity for relationship, that challenged traditional limitations through practical achievement. In growing recognition that medical intervention had transformed desperate battlefield necessity into strategic opportunity that challenged fundamental assumptions about appropriate recognition and legitimate acknowledgement of capability, decision would be required that honored individual autonomy alongside kingdom welfare while serving comprehensive assessment of implications that extended beyond a simple reward distribution. The evening that had begun with battlefield desperation had been transformed into moment of strategic decision that would affect not only individual future, but kingdom governance through alliance that honored demonstrated capability over inherited assumption, recognition that authentic value operated beyond conventional hierarchy through practical contribution that commanded acknowledgement rather than systematic dismissal. Around royal chambers where crisis had been transformed into opportunity for strategic alliance formation, atmosphere reflected transformation from emergency response to comprehensive policy implementation that honored individual recognition alongside kingdom necessity while serving systematic approach to governance that transcended traditional limitation through demonstrated capability. The Omega, whose knowledge had preserved strategic assets, was about to discover whether recognition would translate into position that honored capability over circumstance, while the kingdom whose survival had depended on preservation of succession would accommodate alliance that challenged comfortable assumptions about appropriate hierarchy through practical demonstration of essential contribution and to territorial welfare. Some interventions that began as desperate necessity revealed their strategic significance through systematic assessment of implications that exceeded initial calculation, while some capability that had been dismissed through conventional limitation commanded recognition that transcended normal hierarchy when circumstances required comprehensive utilization of available resources for kingdom survival and succession preservation. 2 years later, the royal healing chambers possessed atmosphere that reflected transformation from battlefield desperation to systematic medical excellence through comprehensive integration of traditional knowledge with contemporary resources, environment where ancient wisdom operated alongside modern infrastructure to serve kingdom healthcare that honored both hereditary understanding and innovative advancement through practical application of proven methods. Queen Lyra Shadowmane occupied position at observation table, where medical students received instruction in healing techniques that combined formal training with traditional knowledge, her presence commanding attention through demonstrated expertise, rather than inherited authority, while serving educational objectives that honored comprehensive assessment of medical capability over conventional limitation of academic protocol. The role that had emerged through battlefield intervention rather than conventional appointment represented integration of capability that transcended anything normal assessment might suggest, while serving royal authority through systematic utilization of healing knowledge that had been preserved through generations of family practice, until circumstances required acknowledgement for community wealth. And kingdom security. The southeastern territories have achieved complete elimination of plague outbreaks, she reported to assembled medical council with professional satisfaction that reflected systematic implementation of treatment protocols that honored ancestral knowledge while serving territorial health through comprehensive disease management, following distribution of traditional remedy formulations that opinion rate beyond conventional pharmaceutical approaches. Mortality rates have decreased by 84%. She continued with analysis that processed transformation through understanding of healing methods that complemented established medical practice. While recovery periods have shortened substantially through integration of botanical medicine, with surgical intervention that honors both traditional wisdom and contemporary technological advancement. The comprehensive approach to Kingdom healthcare had established foundation for medical excellence that operated beyond simple treatment provision to encompass preventive care that honored ancient knowledge while serving contemporary necessity for maintaining population health through systematic approach to disease prevention and comprehensive wellness management that transcended normal limitations. Crown Prince Dorian, her chosen husband following strategic decision that had honored personal recognition alongside political necessity, reviewed medical assessments with expression that mixed royal satisfaction with personal recognition of partnership that had exceeded any calculation based on initial battlefield circumstances. Systematic evaluation that revealed relationship, whose integration had transformed Kingdom capability through acknowledged collaboration. The Royal Council's response to integrated medical practice has been overwhelmingly positive, he observed with tone that carried authority strengthened rather than challenged by marriage alliance that honored expertise alongside royal decision-making responsibility, particularly regarding approaches that demonstrate effective governance through comprehensive resource utilization rather than a systematic limitation that reduces available capability for community welfare. Their partnership reflected alliance that had emerged through recognition rather than conventional arrangement, professional relationship that honored individual expertise while serving royal authority through strategic integration of capability that transcended traditional limitations to encompass systematic contribution that affected Kingdom health and community welfare through comprehensive ethical advancement. Throughout Palace, where royal household operated according to principles that acknowledged capability over circumstance, environment had been transformed through recognition that authentic authority served protection rather than privilege, acknowledgement that effective governance required comprehensive utilization of available knowledge rather than systematic dismissal of capability that challenged conventional hierarchy through demonstrated competence. The Medical Archive Restoration Project has revealed treatments that were previously lost, observed Chief Medical Archivist Elena Brightwater, with professional satisfaction that honored systematic preservation of knowledge that had been recovered through heritage acknowledgement, particularly regarding healing methods that provide historical context for traditional techniques that serve contemporary medical requirements through time-tested effectiveness. The archival recovery had revealed methods that complemented modern approaches while serving strategic objectives that honored ancient wisdom alongside current necessity, demonstration that acknowledgement of traditional knowledge could serve medical advancement rather than challenge established practice through unauthorized healing capability that threatened professional authority through competing methodologies. Training programs for integrated healing among medical personnel, continued Royal Physician Captain Sarah Ironwood with professional efficiency that honored practical implementation of enhanced treatment protocols, have increased recovery rates while establishing systematic approach to comprehensive healthcare that serves Kingdom welfare through balanced utilization of available medical knowledge. DGE. The educational initiative had created foundation for medical enhancement that operated beyond traditional limitation, while serving acknowledgement that traditional knowledge could complement conventional methods rather than replace established protocols that had proven effective for maintaining population health and appropriate medical standards through systematic quality control. Throughout territories where royal influence extended beyond ceremonial recognition to encompass practical protection of populations whose welfare depended on effective healthcare, communities had learned about transformation that honored acknowledgement over dismissal, while maintaining appropriate standards for medical practice that served healing rather than challenged to legitimate professional authority. Diplomatic response from allied kingdoms has been remarkably positive, Queen Lyra noted with assessment that honored international recognition of policies that balance traditional healing with conventional medicine, particularly regarding approaches that demonstrate effective integration of hereditary knowledge with established medical practice that serves population health without challenging professional authority through unauthorized treatment methods. 9 kingdoms have formally requested consultation about implementing similar traditional integration programs, she continued with momentum that revealed broader implications of individual recognition that had inspired institutional changes. While their interest suggests that acknowledgement of hereditary capability serves medical objectives more effectively than systematic dismissal that redio, is available resource for comprehensive healthcare. The diplomatic achievement indicated that honesty about traditional knowledge served political objectives, while providing foundation for alliance building that honored comprehensive capability over conventional limitation. International recognition that validated approaches balancing acknowledgement with appropriate utilization that served population health without challenging established medical sovereignty. In private chambers where royal authority intersected with medical expertise through relationship that honored professional competence alongside personal recognition, Crown Prince Dorian found himself reflecting on transformation that had challenged fundamental assumptions about crisis response and its relationship to strategic value that transcended initial calculation based on battlefield nesis. City, the intervention that brought us together, he observed with tone that mixed strategic satisfaction with personal acknowledgement of circumstances that had created opportunity for recognition, despite systematic barriers designed to maintain comfortable assumptions about Omega capability, was never really about medicine, was it? No, she replied with understanding that had developed through years, when individual recognition had inspired broader transformation of kingdom healthcare philosophy. It was about acknowledgement, and whether hereditary capability could be integrated rather than dismissed when circumstances required comprehensive assessment of available resources for community welfare, rather than systematic limitation through conventional evaluation. Their conversation carried implications that extended beyond personal relationship to encompass fundamental questions about governance and appropriate relationship between authority and capability, recognition and utilization, strategic necessity, and individual acknowledgement that honored both kingdom security and community welfare through comprehensive resource management that transcended trade tional limitation. Around them, palace that had been enhanced through medical integration, while maintaining appropriate dignity, served as demonstration that effective authority operated through comprehensive utilization, rather than systematic dismissal, acknowledgement, rather than reduction, recognition, rather than casual elimination, that might reduce available capability for kingdom welfare through comfortable impatience about appropriate capability distribution. The mathematics were transformational, Crown Prince Dorian concluded, with recognition that transcended initial battlefield necessity to encompass understanding about strategic value that operated beyond conventional calculation. Though the variables exceeded any assessment based on surface evaluation, when heritage revelation transformed kingdom healthcare through acknowledged expertise rather than systematic dismissal of traditional knowledge. In royal archives where their transformation would be documented for future reference, historians would record methods that had balanced acknowledgement with practical necessity, while learning that effective governance required comprehensive capability utilization rather than systematic dismissal, recognition rather than reduction that honored both knowledge and authority through strategic integration that served kingdom welfare. But in private moments when official responsibility allowed expression of personal recognition that had emerged through shared experience and mutual acknowledgement, they would remember battlefield where desperate necessity had been transformed through intervention that commanded strategic partnership rather than casual dismissal, recognition that had emerged through crisis rather than continued oncelement of capability. The Omega whose knowledge had been systematically dismissed had discovered that royal acknowledgement provided superior recognition to careful concealment, while the prince who had cultivated traditional hierarchy had learned that authentic authority required recognition rather than dismissal, integration rather than elimination, that honored comprehensive assessment over comfortable assumption above appropriate capability distribution. Their story had begun with battlefield desperation disguised as military necessity, continued through intervention that challenged fundamental assumptions about Omega capability, and culminated in transformation that honored acknowledgement alongside authority, while establishing precedent about governance that served both capability recognition and kingdom welfare through comprehensive medical advancement. The royal chambers where crisis had been transformed into strategic partnership now served as foundation for comprehensive healthcare planning that honored traditional knowledge while maintaining appropriate authority for kingdom governance, demonstration that effective leadership required balance between recognition and utilization, acknowledgement and integration, heritage preservation and contemporary necessity. Some interventions that began as desperate battlefield necessity awakened recognition that exceeded intended impact while serving revelation of capability that commanded acknowledgement rather than casual dismissal, recognition that authentic authority operated beyond conventional hierarchy to encompass hereditary connection to knowledge that demanded integration rather than systematic elimination. Through comfortable assumption, the crown prince, who had been preserved through traditional knowledge, discovered that his greatest victory lay not in battlefield survival, but in capability recognized, while the Omega, whose heritage had been systematically dismissed, learned that authentic authority sometimes emerged through crisis rather than concealment, acknowledgement rather than elimination, that honored strategic contribution, over maintained limitation through protective dismissal. Ancient knowledge that had been preserved through systematic family practice now served kingdom enhancement through royal recognition, while realm that had operated through conventional medical limitation had discovered that authentic capability exceeded traditional assessment to encompass hereditary potential that commanded strategic integration rather than casual dismissal through comfortable assumption about appropriate knowledge distribution. In growing recognition that individual intervention had transformed not only personal circumstances but kingdom healthcare philosophy, legacy would continue through systematic integration of traditional wisdom that honored both heritage preservation and community welfare. Demonstration that authentic capability deserved acknowledgement rather than dismissal when circumstances required comprehensive utilization of available resources for territorial protection and population health. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.